Hello, this is Richard Walker from Lucidate. Welcome to the second in this video series on cryptocurrencies. In the previous video, we began a walkthrough of Satoshi Nakamoto's 2009 paper, Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. We took a look at asymmetric cryptography to see how it helps with authentication and security. In this video, we're going to continue following the 2009 paper. This will include an introduction to another area of cryptography, hashing functions. After this, we'll address the double spend problem and blockchains, which we will embark on in the next video. In a centralized, trust-based system, you authenticate yourself to a trust authority, such as a bank or credit card firm. A PIN number, handwritten signature, a thumbprint on a phone are all mechanisms in place so that you and only you can withdraw or spend money in your account. If someone tries to impersonate you and spend your money, then hopefully they'll be caught. Furthermore, there's a redress against the trust authority, such as claiming against a credit card company or a bank. This redress is not free, and a small charge will usually be levied against each transaction by the trust authority. These charges legitimately compensate the intermediary for assuming some of the fraud risk. Transactions in a trust-based system are private. They're encrypted and sent over secure private networks. In contrast, transactions in a decentralized, proof-based system are public. They're sent as clear text over public, insecure networks. The security comes from encrypted digital signatures that we shall discuss in this video. But the messages are in clear text and must be readable by third parties such as nodes and miners that we will discuss in future videos. Everyone writes to and reads from the same record or ledger. One evident issue here is that this ledger will become large. At the time this video was being produced in May 2022, the size of the Bitcoin ledger was approaching 400 gigabytes, according to Statista. You will need a decent internet bandwidth and a fair amount of disk space to download and store this ledger. This is something that anyone can do by running something called a node. In future videos, we'll talk about nodes. These nodes are important components in the Bitcoin system that download the ledger, as well as a database of all currently unspent coins. You'll hear these unspent Bitcoin referred to as UTXOs, unspent transaction outputs. As we shall see, nodes are responsible for validating and propagating transactions, maintaining the integrity of the ledger and keeping track of all the UTXOs. These UTXOs are identical to coins and notes in circulation in a fiat-based system. In the 2009 paper, the concept of the coin is simply a chain of digital signatures. These signatures are amendments to the ledger. A Bitcoin owned by an individual can be sold for cash or exchanged for goods and services, that is to say, spent. This is accomplished by writing the details of the transaction to the public ledger. The evident problem here is what is stopping people from committing fraud. For instance, why can't someone just add a line to the ledger stating that they were paid 100 Bitcoin? Alternatively, what stops a seller of goods legitimately accepting an exchange of Bitcoin for their goods and then fraudulently copying and pasting that digital transaction multiple times? How would you stop someone who owns a Bitcoin from spending it several times with different vendors? As you might expect, Satoshi Nakamoto's paper shows how a system can be made robust against these and other malicious actions. It does so using a system based on proof rather than trust. We will want to ensure that the individual that rightfully owns the coins is the person sending the message. We want to ensure that a legitimate message has not been tampered with or altered. We will also want to make sure that an individual can't double spend coins. Without the correct cryptographic checks in place, it would be trivial to copy information on a digital public ledger. Let's see how we can use ideas from cryptography, along with the information we gleaned from the last video, on public-private key encryption to create a trustless proof-based system. To begin, let's discuss hashing, a major topic in cryptography. We've already discussed asymmetric key encryption, where we use a pair of linked keys to encrypt and decrypt a message. The use of keys allows us to move back and forth between plain text and the cipher or encrypted text. We saw in the last video how a message encrypted with a public key can only be decrypted with the corresponding private key. Likewise, a message encrypted with a private key can only be deciphered with the linked public key. Hashing is different. It's one way. It will take an input message of arbitrary length and produce a fixed length output. This output will be unique for a given input. No matter how many times you apply a hash function to identical input, you'll get the same output. But if you change the input message by only a tiny amount, you'll get a totally different output. And the one-wayness means that you can't deduce the input from the hash. The best you can do is guess an input and see if it creates that hash. One hashing system used by Bitcoin, indeed many other cryptocurrencies, is called SHA-256. It was developed by the National Security Agency in the United States. It's used as a standard security mechanism in many applications, including the internet. Most browsers use SHA-256 to enforce security on the public internet. SHA-256 produces a hash that contains 256 bits. You can look at this as the bit string. Alternatively, you can see it as a string of 64 hexadecimal characters, as 64 times a 4-bit hexadecimal is 256. If you wish, you could visualize the hash as a 16 by 16 black and white grid, kind of like a QR code. Here, we transform the word elucidate into its SHA-256 hash. Below, we hash the entire script of this video. No matter what the length of the message, the length of the hash is the same. On the screen now are the hashes generated when I change the representation of the word elucidate very slightly, either by changing capitalization or adding white space. In all cases, the hash changes dramatically. Sometimes you'll hear the hash referred to as the digest. This is just terminology. They mean the same thing. The key point here is that you can't figure out the message from the digest. If someone gives you a hash and asks you to come up with the message that created it, you have no better method other than guessing a random message and seeing if it comes up with that particular 256-bit hash. I'm going to file that under theoretically just about feasible, but for all practical purposes impossible. If you want a feel for how much guessing and checking might be involved, then Grant Sanderson at 3Blue1Brown has produced an excellent YouTube video, How Secure is 256-bit Security? There's a link in the description. So why bother with something that you can't reverse? What's the point? The point is validation. Really fast validation to check that no one has altered or tampered with a message in any way. If someone sends you a digest and also sends you the message that produced that digest, you can run the hash algorithm on the message yourself. If the message has not been altered in any way, then it will produce the identical hash. Let's see how we use hashing in conjunction with private and public key encryption to digitally sign a document. What is to stop someone adding a line to the ledger that transfers coins from one user to them? Here we see an example of a fraudster, Ducat Lie, entering 4 bogus lines on the ledger that will incorrectly or fraudulently reward him with a total of 23 Bitcoin at Lucidate's expense. The Bitcoin protocol would not allow this. In order to update the ledger, a message needs to be sent and digitally signed. This will make use of 2 of the cryptographic techniques we have discussed thus far, namely hashing and public-private key encryption. Digital signatures are much stronger than regular signatures with ink on paper. Ink signatures are supposed to be the same on each message. Accordingly, they can be forged. But a digital signature is unique to both the message and the signatory. So a digital signature is useful in that it links the message and the sender in such a way that it proves that the sender has sent it and the message sent has not been tampered with or altered by any other party. Let's see how. First, we start with the message. The Bitcoin protocol is very specific on what the contents of the message are, and we will discuss those in some detail in the next couple of videos. For now, we just want to focus on the mechanism for ensuring proof of identity, as well as proving that the message has not been tampered with. We then generate the hash of that message using SHA-256. This generates a unique hash relating to that message and only that message. The sender can then encrypt the resulting hash with their private key. The encrypted hash is the digital signature for this message. The two components, the clear text of the message and the signature, can now be submitted for acceptance. Anyone can decrypt the signature with the sender's public key. The decrypted signature will be a SHA-256 hash. The recipient can then apply SHA-256 to the message. The two hashes must be the same. If they are not, then either the message was tampered with or someone is trying to pose as the sender without access to the sender's private key. Signing and validating the authenticity of a message is not a new problem. People have been signing documents for legal and financial purposes for millennia. The centuries-old solution would be to produce a message and only sign it once all points were agreed. This might then be sealed. If the seal was broken before it reached the intended recipient, then there was evidence that the message was tampered with. Likewise, if the document had been modified and modifications weren't initialed or signed, then suspicions were raised. Similarly, people would be unwilling to accept a document where the signature didn't match what they expected. Let's see how the techniques we have discussed over the past two videos are analogous to the tried and trusted seal and signature approach. Not just analogous, but an improvement on. In our digital cryptographic solution, we start with a plain text message that we wish everyone to be able to see and read. But we want to ensure at the same time that everyone can read this clear text message, that we can prove that we sent it and that it has not been tampered with. First, let's create the hash or digest of this message. If we use SHA-256, then we will get a string of 256 zeros or ones, which can also be represented as a string of 64 4-bit hexadecimal characters or a 16 by 16 binary code. This hash is of fixed length and is unique to this message. No one will be able to deduce the message from the hash, but they will be able to generate this exact hash from the unaltered message. We can then encrypt this hash using our private key. This encrypted hash becomes the signature for this message, and we can digitally sign this message with this signature. Now, anyone who receives this message can validate that we sent the message and that it has not been altered by following a simple two-step process. First, decrypt the signature with our public key. The result will be the hash of the original message. Then apply the hashing algorithm to the clear text message. The hashes will match as long as the original clear text message has not been tampered with. If someone has altered the message, then this would completely alter the hash and the signature would be completely different. This is Richard Walker at Lucidate. In this video, we've seen how two areas of cryptography, hashing and public-private key encryption, are used to verify payments. In this case, we weren't using cryptography to make our message secret. The message is sent as clear text, not as an encrypted cipher. Instead, we're using cryptography to generate a signature that shows that the message was unaltered and sent by a specific person. In the next video, we will see how we can use this approach so that only the person who has crypto funds can send these funds. Please join me in that next video where we will dive deeper into the Bitcoin protocol. We'll discuss how payments are transacted using the ledger. In particular, we will explore UTXOs, unspent transaction output, in more detail. An appreciation of UTXOs along with blockchain makes it clear how Bitcoin solves the double spend problem. For more information, please visit www.lucidate.co.uk or contact Lucidate via any of the means on your screen. See you in the next video.